Good afternoon. And welcome to the first ever Cronkite Global Week at the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication at Arizona State University. My name is Jan Holland Malcolm, and I am the program manager for Cronkite Global Initiatives. We foster meaningful connections among Cronkite students, faculty, staff, and international media professionals, scholars, and citizens. Cronkite Global Initiatives fulfills its mission by building bridges of understanding, mutual respect, and shared global engagement experiences. It is my pleasure to introduce this afternoon's moderator and our special guest. Juan Mandel is an associate professor and director of Cronkite Global Initiatives at the Cronkite School. Before coming to ASU, he was an assistant professor of public relations and advertising, director of the Latino Media and Communication Program, and the co-founder and director of the Media Engagement Research Lab at DePaul University in Chicago. Verónica Sanchis Bencomo is a Venezuelan photographer who is currently based in New York and is the founder and curator of Foto Féminas. Foto Féminas is a platform established in the interest in promoting monthly online features, the work of female photographers working in Latin America and the Caribbean. Since 2015, Foto Féminas has organized and produced photo exhibitions in Argentina, China, Guatemala, Peru, Chile, and Mexico, and of course, Instagram. And now now it's my pleasure to present Juan and Veronica.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here, and Juan for this lovely invitation. Yeah.
Well, it's our pleasure. Thank you for everyone that is here and everyone that is online. We're thrilled to have you, and we look forward to having this conversation with Veronica. You want to take it?
Sure. So here, right? Yes. So I'm a photographer, but I'm also a curator for the platform Foto Féminas. But everything really connects about where I come from, my identity. And I wanted to talk about that, about a little bit about myself, my background, and how that played an impact in my motivation and my inspiration. So I'll talk a little bit about me. This is my hometown, Caracas. This is where I was born and raised. It's a city that taught me a lot of things, seeing a lot of diversity in terms of ethnicities, but also in terms of wealth. And I think during the time that I was growing up in Venezuela, you could also feel very connected to the region in South America. And I think this was all related, to political history in our region, where, looking in the past, there was a lot of coups in neighboring countries or, refugees, and Venezuela once upon a time was a land of, giving refugee to a lot of neighboring countries. And this is something that I grew up hearing, and I think also, through our different accents in Spanish, one can tell, where you come from, or, so even when I was in school, I remember, having classmates from Colombia, Chile, Argentina, or their parents. And I mean, all of this kind of is, of course, part of my identity, but I think as well as that, there is the, what we consume, the images, what are the expectations to a region. There is often connections to, poverty, in terms of women. Also, I think, prostitution, there are expectations, and you grow up having images about this, as well as, political changes in the region. Being from Venezuela, I think Cuba later became a very significant history to our contemporary, understandings as well. So all of this, I think it's part of indirectly who I become and, you know, how we are influenced. So I wanted to share about that. And then there is this other side of, I'm from Venezuela, and being a kid, what were the expectations as well? You know, I think beauty, it was always a major thing, especially as a woman. Any beauty pageant, you know, was a very big deal as well. Miss Universe, perfection, hair. So this is like another contrast of identity as well, and what are we consuming in terms of image. And I wanted to talk about also my first sort of like recognitions or memories of politics, and for my own country, and also I think my first memories and understanding very vaguely what is power, what is, you know, what is a president, or what does this refer to. And so this was actually in '92. It was the first attempt of a coup in Venezuela, which was organized by Hugo Chavez. And I vaguely remember this day because it was actually my birthday. And I remember that nobody showed up to my birthday party, except that my neighbor. And it was I think this is my first memory of politics and understanding, yeah, something about this. So I wanted to talk a little bit about this because this actually later plays an impact in my journey. So later in 1998, that same person who attempted the coup wins the presidency. And so it begins a new presidential, you know, term, basically. And of course, here I'm a little bit old and I understand what it means, you know, an election and all of that. But also, I thought this was very interesting, this image, because it's this representation of this beautiful woman, very elegant, accompanying this man who represents power. So I thought it was an image that sort of represented Venezuela in a way, you know, like this idea of the Miss Universe, Miss Venezuela beauty pageant, and the figure of power. Later, as a teenager, well, late teenager really, it becomes very real, you know, protests, it becomes very real, you know, the division of opinions, and it becomes a regular act, you know, on every weekend pretty much, you know, protests for one party, protests for another party, and this just becomes every day in everyone's life, you know. This is in the early 2000s. When I still lived in Venezuela. So in 2004, I moved to UK. I moved there with intention to learn English and to return to Venezuela. But I actually end up staying in the UK to pursue my photography studies. So I wanted to talk a little bit about this since, well, we have students here that when I go to begin to study photography, I wasn't really clear where I was going with my photography. I was seeking for something, but I had no idea what I was seeking for, you know, but I was just taking, a lot of photos as I was traveling, just focusing on different interests, really. I go home, I take pictures as well. I go back to Europe, I take photos, but it's a process of, just learning really what is that I want to, what is the story I want to tell. So I wanted to share this image that I actually came across in my hard drive preparing this presentation. So this is the bus stop in Swansea, Wales, where I went to university. And I actually remember when I arrived there in Swansea in Wales as a student, and I was like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? You know? And now looking after all these years, well, 11 years at this image, I actually can see that I was capturing this idea of, I don't know where I'm going, you know, and I was at the bus stop. And I think it's interesting at that time, I just didn't see, I didn't have the maturity to see that what I wanted to say, I was photographing it really. So I continue my experimentations. So it comes to my final year of university that after all this, of course, process of learning and experimenting with photography, I just feel very strong that I want to go to Latin America, and that what I want to be focusing on is in that region, even though I was based in Europe. So in my last year, I go with an NGO in Chile to take photos in a burnt unit. And I just want to be there, take photos, document what's happening, and witness it, yeah. But then on the side, I'm in Santiago, and I have the opportunity to go to all those museums, the library, and I just want to see more from Latin America, something that I didn't have as much resource in my university in Wales. And this has a huge impact when I go back to UK. So I go back feeling I just want to tell Latin American stories, but I don't live there. And then at the same time, after having seen and found so many artists references when I was in Chile, I have this really strong desire. I want to work with artists. What is it like to work with artists? What are their space? What are they thinking? What is the process? What is the creativity behind? And I begin to seek, you know, and just knocking at artists' studios, you know, can I document your process? Can I ask questions? And I was very lucky that they gave me, you know, they gave me space, and I was able to document their space, the creativity, and then I graduate. And, you know, then it comes the reality, what I am going to do. I moved to London, and well, I do a lot of assisting to photographers and all of that, but it continues my thing inside that I want to interview. I mean, I want to be with Latin America. I want to be with artists. How can I combine this? And essentially I begin this journey with the idea of interviewing photographers. So I move away from the idea of artists, and then I look into what are they making? What are contemporary Latin American photographers? So I end up in this publication run by an NGO called Latin American House, and the magazine is called Ventana Latina. And they give me a section once a month just to run this interview, which I call 10 questions with. And that's what it was. I was asking 10 questions to the photographers. So during this process, you know, I also learned a lot reading their experience, and you know, I had this opportunity to ask what I was curious about. But I also kind of go back to that sort of like frustration moment of like, where are the women? You know, I am from Latin America, I am a woman, it's such a large region, you know, why is it so hard to find, or why are they not being represented? So, and in that period, I moved to New York. This is in 2013. And I began to volunteer at the library at the International Center of Photography. And in that experience of seeing so many publications and different formats and doing these interviews that I was conducting, I realized I want to do my own thing. And I get to my thing, my project, after all that experimentation and research. I realized that the thing that I really want to do is celebrate and find Latin American women photographers. So like really narrow it. And this is how it's the birth of Foto Féminas. But it took me a while to get there. So I began, this journey as a website with the intention that I wanted to make it accessible to everyone. And I also decided that I want to make it bilingual, English and Spanish, with the idea of making it also, widely read, more accessible to more people. And I just really want to, represent all the countries and the islands as well in the Caribbean. So, but then I also realized, like, the web space is just not enough. That having a platform is not enough online. So I realized that it's important to also, organize exhibitions, create collaborations with institutions or culture centers and projections, organize talks with the photographers as well, and somehow also create this thinking space or debate. So I organized exhibitions in Guatemala. This was our first show at the Water Photo Festival in Antigua. Later, I moved to Hong Kong in 2016, and I'm not really sure like how I was going to play, the impact moving completely the opposite side, and how I was going to continue. But then I decided I want to share my research in the festivals that I could, be accepted in Asia. And then it came up this invitation from Pingyao Photography Festival in China. They had a theme, expanded geographies. So I was like, this is perfect for what I am interested in. So I submit my proposal, and it's been our largest exhibition. We had 155 images and 12 photographers, and there was photographers from all over, from Europe, Latin America, Africa. So I thought this was just, a great place to have a dialogue. Then I received an invitation from Argentina for International Women's Day to organize an outdoor exhibition in Argentina's like women's park in Buenos Aires. And so I decided to select 4 women photographers from Argentina to exhibit their work there. And then connect to the environment as well. And I traveled to Argentina just to have conversations as well and learn myself from that process. And then in 2018, we decided we want to do a show in Peru, and bring new stories. And I collaborate with 2 women photographers based in Lima and expand the dialogues. And then we apply in Santiago in Chile with the same exhibition, but then we extended it, adding more photographers from Chile. So again, like wanting to be as inclusive as we can. And then I don't know how can I play this little video here. Maybe.
Chris, can you assist? There's a video on the presentation.
Yeah, thank you. So when I'm in Hong Kong in 2016, I really have this desire that I want to do the same, but with books. So I decided that I want to collect photo books made by Latin American women photographers. So I collect them. I create this open call, and in fact, when I went to Argentina and in Chile, a lot of the photographers donated books. And then that also played an impact of what do I want to do with these books that people are gifting me. So I go back to Hong Kong, and then I decide that I want to create this sort of, library archive, And as I receive more books, and I begin to see a thread as well, like there are colors, shapes, like the geometry, and I just find it really interesting how we connect through other ways as well, not only as purely as, you know, Latin American women photographers, but also in sort of in design decisions. And then I thought, wow, this is quite powerful. Okay, I'll just go to the next slide. Oh, maybe not. Oh, okay. So yeah. Okay, there we go. Ooh. Oh, there we go. So yeah, this is how it looks on the website, basically. A selection of the books, and the idea is just to promote and finding another way, to just weave this story and connect us. And then I just feature them on the website, just like the cover with the name of the artist and the web address to the photographer. And I don't show like the videos inside, just purely for a copyright reason, for the designer and the photographer. But I mean, it's there for anyone to contact the photographer should there be any interest in purchasing. And then from that, I decide that I really want to share the library, and because we don't have a space, so I begin this idea to think like it would be good to present it at pop-up fairs or galleries or culture centers. So this is the first time that I actually go outside Hong Kong, where I was based, with the library, and I go to Taiwan, Taipei, where I meet Vivian. This was great. This was just like such an opening eye, and seeing so many other artists, how are they displaying, you know, what is the language as well of printing, and the narrative, and also I think this connection between the viewer and the book, and to witness that. And I see the value of it, and I just continue doing it. So then this is in Hong Kong, the photo book fair. I presented with a few more books, and then this is the Tai Kung, an art center in Hong Kong. And then it just sort of like continues this idea of presenting the library in a different way. So it's like a very mobile library, essentially. And then I, together with a collective in Hong Kong, I create this sort of like mobile library that I kind of wear, and it's sort of like performance, like wearing the books, and people can see it and create some kind of curiosity. But I think also breaking the ice as well, how bringing curiosity, you know, through the performance. And yeah, it was just like a very interesting way for me to represent the library. And I love this quote. I have always imagined that paradise will be a kind of library. And I came across this quote when I was a library assistant in ICP. And it really stuck with me, it really did. And I think this might have been also why I decided I wanted to create a library. Yeah, it's just, I really love it, and I always share this quote. And then it came the pandemic, 2020. We were, you know, everybody was in their own reality, right? And I thought in this whole sort of like isolation, how can we come together? How can we connect? And I began this sort of first cycle of talks, which is charlas, through social media on Instagram. And I began organizing these talks with the photographer, from Foto Féminas. And then their photographers begin to also take the initiative of inviting, other photographers. I want to have a conversation with you because your work is completely different to my work. So I want to know what's happening here and what can come up in 60 minutes, which each the time we could have these, IGTV talks. And I thought this was a very interesting process. We did about 28, 30 talks of this. And then in the whole process, we became closer. I mean, we belong to this network, but I think having these sort of conversations, and then we open up like a WhatsApp group, we were sharing ideas and experiences of, the pandemic. These brought us much closer. And then I came up with the idea of creating, this is also a little video, if we could play it, Chris, thank you, of actually creating our first collaborative piece where all the photographers had the freedom to respond to COVID, basically. And what was that like for every single one of them? And yeah, so this is our online exhibition, which we had never done. I wanted to do it online because at that time, there was no open space, and I thought it was very relevant to launch the exhibition online and share their stories in that way. And now we're exhibiting a selection of images for the first time, actually, here. And I have to say that looking back at the images, because I hadn't looked at them in a while, I realized looking at the photos that you begin to see more men in their intimacy. And that's something as a woman photographer, you don't often see that, because you often see it's the man taking photos of a woman, right? And that's mostly the representation. So I thought that was interesting, that another side of it came out naturally from that process. So yeah, I mean, the take was very different. I mean, some were like with the phone, some with the camera, some started with one image and then it became a project. Tamara's image, it became a project, and then it became the cover of a National Geographic magazine. So it's interesting how the journey evolved, for some of them. And some of them, it became a longer project as well. So the contributions were, the creative contribution grew on some of them in an actual project. So this kind of reaffirms to me like the importance also of community and having conversations and hearing what others are making, and what is the learning process and how can that impact other artists as well. So that sort of like motivates me to continue with what I'm doing, and that hopefully people also enjoy it, of course. But essentially, I wanted to, talk about my journey and how that, sort of like is representing Foto Féminas.
That is great. Thank you. So we're going to leave time for questions. So please, Chris is going to put the microphone up here and you guys can line up. But in the meantime, I wanted to ask you, why is it so important for people to see themselves as photographers? Why do you think that it was so important to give Latin American women a space to be able to show their work?
I mean, I think it's like like I said, as a personal experience, it was that need of knowing what are my peers doing, what are my peers are working on, and how that inspires you, motivates you, and creates also aspirations. And I think gathering them, celebrating them, plays a positive impact in all of us as a community. And also, you know, you grow, I think, naturally. And that motivates me. And I learn a lot seeing their works and see their journey as well. So I feel like as much as I advocate for them and what I would like younger women photographers to learn from them, I'm also learning in that process for sure. Yeah.
Milana.
Hi, yes, it's Milana again. I would like to ask you, Veronica, what is the main challenge that women, the women photographers in Latin America face? Is it like the professional area is mostly men area, or it's about the being a traditional society and the family doesn't want to be women a photographer? What is the most biggest challenge for women?
I mean, I think in general, from the feedback I have received from my colleagues, I think it's related to funding. There is an issue with funding, and to develop stories for midterm or long term. I think long term, like in the morning we were hearing, you know, to be able to fund a long project, to dedicate it, you know, you need to have a funding or a side job that allows you to fund your work. So I think that is an issue. But I think there are always challenges, right? Like others, like by the people or editors, but I think if you had good work, you know, you can show your skills. But I think funding, it's definitely a recurring challenge.
So tell us a little bit about the exhibit that you mounted yesterday. So from my point of view, there is an extreme tension that you feel in these photos because of having a limited space to shoot your subjects and to express your creativity, right? So how did you curate this selection and what does it reflect?
Yeah, I mean, when I was making the selection, I really wanted to sort of give this idea of isolation and certain claustrophobia as well. But also, I wanted to kind of take this sort of journey that you would be from being locked in your house and sort of gently moves into dreaming, going to the outside, and then how eventually we get to go outside in a progressive time. Yeah. But I was very interested also about all these intimate moments, whether it's intimate moments with yourself, I mean, the photographer taking photos of herself, or with a family, or how also we begin to contemplate quiet moments and the value of those moments. Yeah, that's my motivation with this selection.
Any other questions from the audience? If not, I'm going to ask you another. So as you're working to continue growing the platform, what do you think are the next big steps to empower Latin American women photographers to adopt the practice and to master their craft?
I mean, I think I feel like all the photographers who feature on Foto Féminas, they're doing so well in terms of their personal projects, but also getting recognition, getting assignments, or awards as another way of recognition. But I've started to really think it's about the newer generation as well. How can we also, provide certain tools, to that younger generation of photographers to jump into the field with better understanding of how can you make it as a photographer living in Latin America? So I think that's sort of like my next goal in mind. How can we empower them and share our own experience journey, and hopefully that makes it easier somehow for them. Yeah.
Hi, can you introduce yourself and ask your question?
Yes, hi, my name is Juliet. I'm a master's student here at Cronkite. And my question is, we had a panelist earlier today, Alice Driver, who said that 85% of photographers are men, only 15% are women, which is a number that I found really staggering. So I'm wondering, what advice do you have to young women who are interested in pursuing photography and going into this very male-dominated field?
I mean, I think it's really important to continue producing work and to continue, showing good work and showing your integrity as a professional. I think the worst it would be to stop what we do. In terms of Latin America, I can see there is a wave of a lot of collectives coming together, working together, and that way also applying for grants, and sort of dividing the stories depending where they are based. And I think that's an interesting way. I would say in the last 2 years, I've seen that, and I can see they're getting the attention and they're being awarded for their work. So in other regions, I'm not sure how is it working, but I've definitely seen a positive change in that sense, in the collectivity, or collaboration, yeah.
And if I may add to that, Alice today was mentioning that we all have decision-making power when it comes to allocating our budgets or our resources. And so giving a hand to someone else that might be in the same boat as you are might actually be a good way for you to have a positive impact on continuing to affect change, because until we don't change, the industry won't change, right? And we see it, for example, in the consumer market, where consumers are starting to request from brands that they work with, for example, companies that are produced or that are owned by, minorities or women-owned or something like that. And we can start asking the same things out of the media as well. You want to introduce yourself and ask your question?
Yeah, hi, my name is Monseapu. I'm a photographer, but I'm originally from Mexico, so learning about this is amazing. I'm just curious, you're saying this is more to empower women from Latin America and learn more about how they're doing photography in their lives there. Have you guys thought about expanding, maybe I missed this because I was in class, but to women who are immigrants, in the US or that more of that scene, because it is different than documenting your own country?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. So I recently moved back to the US, and that is definitely something that is starting also popping up in my mind. There is obviously a large, Latin heritage or Latin migrants in the US, and I think it's an interesting chapter also to open up and include. But at the moment, I haven't done a curatorial specific on that. But yeah, definitely it's in my mind. Yeah. Thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Vivian. I'm a visitor here. It's amazing to follow your career. Veronica, I have a question about you and yourself and the practice of developing this platform. So I have observed that you had been doing this alone for a number of years. And sometimes you're the curator, sometimes you're the artist, sometimes you are the facilitator. What do you think is a more effective path? If you were to do it again, and you're representing a very big region with a lot of talents, what would be a way that others can learn from you to see how this platform can be more even better facilitated?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. I mean, that's true. I've been doing it alone for several years, And I think definitely in the last 6 months, I've started to question myself, more like, okay, there is so much I can do. And I think I need to choose my battles. Like, okay, where am I going to focus? And I think one of my strengths maybe is more communication, connecting people, whether it's the photographers with, editors or facilitating, as you were saying. And I like doing it. And I think I can see that's perhaps a strength I have. But yeah, there are other very important roles like seeking for money, writing for grants or proposals. So yeah, there are many sort of like jobs to be done. But yeah, I think for me, it's really creating the space, giving the opportunity for people to talk about their works, and I think that's why I've always had that interest in interviewing photographers, interviewing artists, because I just want to hear more, learn more, to value it, right? Like if we have more insight to the story, then, well, it gives the different dimension.
So what advice would you give to Cronkite students who might be graduating and thought that they had a particular path in mind, and then by the time they are about to finish with school, they realize that perhaps they want to explore something more close to their passion?
I think, for me, I think you should focus on the thing that you're very passionate about, because I think that allows you to be creative. And I mean, that the reason why I keep doing it alone is because I enjoy it, of course. And that also allows me to look at it in different ways, and how can I, adapt it to different formats, because I'm passionate and I like it, and I can just keep seeing new ideas, new chapters to it. So I think it's good to stay honest. And of course, there are going to, we do other jobs to make a living. But I think also doing what you like doing takes you to, it kind of connects you to people that you want to work with, or people you want to collaborate, because I would like to think that people can see through your passion. Yeah.
And I'm going to add to that fostering relationships is very important, because actually when Veronica and I met many years ago, we were in a very repetitive job every day where our daily tasks were very similar, and I'm sure that was not your most creative photography ever. So fostering relationships is also a good way for growing your network, absolutely. If anyone else has one last question, we have a couple more minutes before we wrap up.
I'm sorry, I'm with the same question, but I can't, stop thinking about your answer. You say that the main problem, challenge that faced the women photographers in Latin America is the funding. But why is that the problem? Why, did you do any research? Does the founders doesn't believe that the women photographers are not talented, or why they are not founded?
Oh, the funding, I mean, as in the financial aspect.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. Why are they?
Well, I think we definitely don't have the same resources in terms of asking for grants. I mean, if I talk about Venezuela, we don't have any. I know other countries are more financially richer and can provide more. For example, Chile, they definitely have more opportunities to apply for book publications or exhibitions. I'm not sure exactly for personal projects or in terms of journalism. That I'm not sure if I have one, but in terms of art, I do know. Argentina, they have funds. Mm-hmm. I know because I know a lot of photographers who've published books, but not the the resources are not as broad as it can be in the US or in Europe, yeah.
And there are structural issues too, right? Where, if you're getting paid less for your work, that means that you also have less access to building a fund that will allow you to buy better equipment. And it's just a perpetuating circle where you're stuck without opportunity.
Yeah, but I was asking, comparing to the men, for example, does it mean that for men photographers doesn't have this problem with the funding, but women has?
Oh, I'm sure they also have the challenge of funding. I'm sure they have it too. Yeah. But it's specifically, what are they giving assignments, you mean, to men? So the same in terms of feedback that I received from my colleagues, I think in terms of journalism, there is a lot of an expectation that women are not for the high risk stories. So I think there is definitely a different sort of like expectation for what kind of stories women can handle. I haven't experienced that personally, but from colleagues I have received that feedback, yeah.
Thank you so much.
Hello, Veronica. Nice to see you again, actually. This is Tasneem from Humphrey Fellowship. I want to ask you about the percentage of Latin American photographer that follow your initiative or involved in your initiative, and how many of them that based in Latin America, and how the percentage who lives abroad. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't have a percentage. I should really conduct like an internal research, but I can say that they also move a lot as well. Sometimes they're based in Mexico, an Argentinian photographer, or then they move to the US, but then they return to Latin America. So, but I think that's very natural in photographers. They're relocating, but I wouldn't be able to give you a number as such, but most of them are based in Latin America, yeah.
Hi.
My name is Kevin Jonah. I'm a sophomore here at Cronkite. You're obviously a photographer, and you're a founder of Foto Féminas. Photographs are very evocative. They're a form of storytelling. Have you ever been criticized for your work? And if you have, how do you, defend yourself from that criticism and continue doing the work that you are doing?
I can't think of a particular moment that someone has said to me directly. I don't think I've experienced as such directly that somebody has said no. But I'm trying to think if any of my colleagues have shared. I mean, if anything, when I started Foto Féminas, I remember I was based in New York, and I shared with this photographer who is not from Latin America. She's from Europe, but is a woman. I said, I want to start an online platform to represent Latin American women photographers and the Caribbean. And she asked me, is there even any? And I remember I was so upset, and that, I was really angry, to be honest. And that actually gave me a lot of motivation to continue my research, because I realized how needed it was to be done. So I guess I made that anger, kind of like proactive. So in that sense, I think that's been the most offensive sort of about my work. I mean, she wasn't talking about my photographic work, but she was talking about my region and my identity too, because I'm Venezuelan and I'm a photographer. So I guess she didn't even consider me a photographer. So, yeah.
From a scholar perspective, what I can tell you is that when you do anything that is public facing, where your work is going to be public facing, you're automatically opening yourself up to being criticized. And that is part of a game. There's different type of feedback that people can give you, but the important thing is that you reflect on how you approach your work, and if you're happy with it, and if you feel confident with it, then you can take the criticism and you can think about it and try to improve for the next time, but it's important not to let it be part of who you are, right? So we spent a lot of hours at work, and because of that, our work is part of our identity, right? And so when something of your work gets criticized, we take it as something personal. But it's very brave of all of you to go out and put your writing and your photos and your videos out there for people to see. So from my personal perspective, I would say keep comfort on the fact that you are serving someone else by executing your work. All right, and I think with that, we're going to wrap this up. Thank you for everyone for attending, and the photos are here. There's some refreshments, please mingle, and if you want to network with Vero, she will be sticking around. Thank you for being here today.